Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for April 29, 2025. The GenZ / RTO edition. And we begin with that story from the Financial Times, which reports that Gen Z is leading the charge back to the office. Data shows younger staff, more than baby boomers, crave the connection and routine of in-person work. That's certainly my experience, as my daughter really wants to go back to the office and indeed has made that part of her regular day. People contrasting to some stereotypes, Gen Z, the cohort born between 1997 and 2012, is leading the charge back to the office, while older generations are more reluctant to return to patterns of pre-enteism. Workers under 24 are more likely to be in the office than their counterparts. So if you have a Gen Z, and we all will have a Gen Z workforce someday, you need to think about returning to the office. Next up from Reuters, Wells Fargo nears full regulatory relief as CFPB lifts its consent order. Wells Fargo cleared its 12th consent order since 2019 and moved closer to fixing its long-standing regulatory issues that have kept the bank under an asset cap of $1.95 trillion. The CFPB has lifted the 2018 consent order relating to the lender's compliance risk management. A similar consent order entered into the bank was lifted by the OCC, or Office of Comptroller of the Currency, back in February. Today's termination, along with the recent closure of other consent orders, demonstrates that Wells Fargo has put its risk and control infrastructure to work, according to CEO Charlie Scharf. And our next story is an odd one, as a man posing as a chief compliance officer of Manhattan's Dominion Bank and Trust admittedly helped rip off would-be customers as a part of a $4 million fraud scheme. Gerald Shaw pled guilty Thursday in Manhattan court to participating in an advanced fee scam. Shaw and others falsely represented the bank would obtain financing or credit for victims in exchange for large upfront payments, prosecutors said. Despite boasting an address in Manhattan's financial district, the bank itself was a fraud, and Shaw drafted documents, including standby letters of credit, that were sent to victims in exchange for payments, knowing the bank did not have the assets to back them up. So I have to say, this was the first one for me where someone posing as a CCO was part of a fraud scheme to defraud customers or others. And our final story comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, which asks the question, can the feds get a bribery conviction? As a federal jury deadlocked last week on all 3 corruption charges against Illinois Senator Emil Jones III, and the district judge, Andrea Wood, declared a mistrial. You would think that Chicago's legendary Public Corruption and Organized Crime Unit would have a high success rate, but lately it's run into serious trouble. In the last 7 months, it's prosecuted 37 persons on public corruption charges against 4 defendants, and the jury voted to acquit on 7 and deadlocked on the other 20. Another 20. So not a very good record for the feds on this issue going forward. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.